The arcade racing game seems like kind of a lost art at this point. Sure, every once in a while we do get a Horizon Chase Turbo or an Onrush, but gone are the days where every time you turned around there was a new wacky racing game that happily traded in realistic physics for massive fun factor points. Seeing any of those racing IPs collect dust never hurt quite as much as Burnout though. To me, the Burnout games, Burnout 3 Takedown in particular, were pretty much the gold standard of that genre, and I would have a hard time coming up with any game since that has really topped them. Well, perhaps this is where developer 3 Fields Entertainment comes in. The team has certainly come into their own over the years with a series of games that have sort of beaten around the bush of truly making a Burnout successor. But now, the days of skirting around the issue seem to be over, and 3 Fields has released their true full-on spiritual Burnout successor with Dangerous Driving. Not a particularly creative name, but we'll go with it. The team is made up of some folks that worked on the original Burnout games with Criterion, so I suppose they are as qualified as anyone to take a stab at unofficially reviving the franchise in the form of a new one. So as you might expect, right off the bat, the menu layout, the music, the sound effects all scream Burnout. Dangerous Driving shamelessly copies every aspect of the visual tone and attitude of the Burnout games to the point where I almost kind of wish they hadn't and maybe mixed in a bit of their own flavor here and there. But to be fair, they are accurately giving me what I want, a new Burnout game. How does it play though? Well, all in all, I think they pretty much achieved what they were going for. The control is tight, the drifting feels great, the shunting the hell out of an opposing car, causing them to careen out of control, feels exactly how I wanted it to. As far as presentation and the fundamental gameplay mechanics go, Dangerous Driving pretty much nails it. It's been a long time since I felt like I was playing anything that approached those arcade racing classics from the first decade of the new millennium, and I'm happy to say Dangerous Driving does plant its feet firmly in that genre. Cars whizzing by you, pulling off a successful drift, catching way more air than is physically possible, right before nailing an opposing car and sending it bursting into flames behind you, all feels great and often elicits that unique type of tension that only a game in this genre can. In my first few hours of playing, I can't tell you how many times I had to stop myself from clamping my teeth down and squeezing my controller like it owes me money. The way the game controls and feels is complemented nicely with some very pretty graphics that I wouldn't exactly call current gen, but they definitely seem like a nice upgrade from the games it's inspired by, and for the price point, I'm pretty satisfied with them. Once you really get into the nitty-gritty of the game, you may start to notice some things that I noticed that do chip away at the game though. While the pedigree of former Criterion developers certainly shows itself often, the low to mid-budget nature of the game also rears its ugly head in a few different ways from time to time. For starters, there's only a small handful of tracks, and you will see every environment this game has to offer before you know it. The event types and vehicle types are varied just enough to keep you going through those tracks in my opinion, but it often feels borderline too shallow, especially after a long play session. Aside from that, certain technical choices I found annoying were the fact that in some areas the sunlight creates sort of a visual flare that looks cool but ultimately serves no purpose but to obstruct your vision, and I kinda wish they either toned that down or just removed it completely. In addition to that, the camera angle is not the best choice, as it's just a little too parallel to the ground and close to the car for my taste. It's okay when you're just driving at the basic speed, but once you start using turbo, the angle gets even sharper, creating some blind spots on hills, and in these moments, you can end up with about the same chance of being able to dodge any oncoming cars as you have of guessing the number I'm thinking of right now. 17,172. To me, this field of vision problem is probably the biggest flaw with the game. It's not always an issue, especially if you're playing on a large TV or a computer monitor that you happen to be very close to, but I can't help but point out that Burnout Takedown didn't really have this problem, at least not to the same extent. Regardless of whether or not the car was using boost, the game always was able to convey the correct sense of speed without making the angle too sharp for you to tell what was right in front of you. So you could focus more on utilizing your own God-given reflexes instead of having to fight with with the game at its most crucial moments. It also doesn't help that there is virtually no in-game music beyond the menus, so I was a little disappointed by that too. Although supposedly you can link the game up with your Spotify account, which I haven't figured out how to do, but apparently you can do that. None of these negatives are huge deals on their own, but they do add up to something that does keep the game from being quite as great as it very easily could have been. So where ultimately does dangerous driving fall in a gaming atmosphere that has largely moved on from these types of games? Well, I think it's going to largely be up to you and what kind of racing games you like. Much like Horizon Chase Turbo, which harkened back to Outrun type games, dangerous driving does a fantastic job of imitating and replicating this older style of game to great effect. But unlike Horizon Chase Turbo, dangerous driving doesn't really do anything else. It doesn't really make much of an effort to evolve that older style or bring anything new to the table at all other than a new graphics engine. And occasionally it even gets in its own way with some less than optimal technical choices. The fun moments definitely outweigh the frustrating ones for me though. Dangerous Driving is a good game, and easily the developer's finest outing yet, even if it does get there by being more of a great imitation than the worthy successor that it could have been.